the investigation into the most mystifying airplane crash in history. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines' Boeing 777 was operating a flight from the capital of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, to the capital of China, Beijing. At 0042, the aircraft took off and disappeared from radar screens within 40 minutes. There were 239 people on board. To this day, this flight remains the most mysterious in aviation history. Reconstruction of events. On March 7, 2014, on an ordinary Friday night into Saturday, a flight was planned to last about 6 hours. The crew consisted of 12 people. The captain was 50-year-old Zahari Ahmad Shah, a highly experienced pilot with more than 18,000 flight hours, half of which were on the Boeing 777. At this point, he had been working for Malaysia Airlines. The co-pilot was 27-year-old Fariq Abdul Hamid. This flight was his final training flight. The next one was supposed to be his exam. The captain requested 49 tons of fuel, enough for 7.5 hours of flight. The aircraft was 12 years old. 2 years earlier, during taxiing at Shanghai Airport, the wingtip had been damaged but was successfully replaced. At the time, there were no remarks on its technical condition. No extreme weather conditions were expected along the route. The only nuance was that part of the route passed through areas of strong winds, which could cause turbulence. At 0042, the aircraft lifted off the ground. The aircraft was equipped with the ACRS communication system, which every hour sent data to the airline via satellites, including fuel levels. At 1:07, it transmitted the last parameters. The aircraft reached the boundary of Malaysia's control zone, then entered Vietnamese airspace. The Malaysian air traffic controller instructed the crew to switch to a new frequency for communication with Vietnamese controllers and bid farewell. This was the last message from flight MH370. Then the aircraft turned off the transponder and stopped responding on the radio. 2 minutes later, the aircraft's identifier disappeared from the screens of Malaysian, Vietnamese, and Thai air traffic control. Controllers reported the disappearance to the airline and requested any available information. They had no data from the ACARS system. Malaysia Airlines responded that the aircraft was following its route. However, 2 hours after the plane disappeared, the airline admitted its mistake. They had been providing flight plan data, not actual observations. Now, only the Malaysian military saw the aircraft. It deviated to the right from the planned route and then turned back, flying towards Malaysia. The aircraft was finally lost near Penang Island. It is known that flight MH370 remained in the air for another 7 hours until it exhausted its fuel supply. Through the Inmarsat satellite system, it transmitted engine status information every hour. Based on these data, investigators calculated the most likely further route of the Boeing 777. According to the investigation, the aircraft then turned south into the Indian Ocean. At 8:19, the last communication session with the Inmarsat satellite occurred, and at 9:15, the aircraft did not respond to a request from the satellite, which meant only one thing: it had crashed into the ocean. At 11:30, the most extensive search operation in aviation history began, both in terms of cost and the number of resources and countries involved. The main part of the aircraft and the bodies of the victims have still not been found. However, over time, 27 aircraft debris pieces have been found on various shores of the Indian Ocean, only 3 of which belong to the missing aircraft. Malaysia and China spent $142 million on a complex search operation, only to come away empty-handed after 3 years. So what happened that fateful night? The investigation uncovered many interesting facts. For example, it was discovered that the first left turn after the aircraft disappeared from the controller's screens was performed manually. The autopilot had been turned off. The main suspicion fell on the crew members. Among the passengers were 2 Iranians who used fake passports to purchase tickets and check in for the flight. According to Interpol, Both had legally left Iran and obtained fake documents at later points in their journey. They had no criminal records. After checking the Iranians for links to terrorist groups, investigators concluded that their goal was immigration to Europe. The FBI and CIA found no evidence proving an act of terrorism, though they did not rule it out. But who deliberately turned the Boeing around and took it off course? The main official version was the hijacking of the aircraft by unknown persons. This was stated by Malaysia's Minister of Transport. The first suspects were the pilots of the missing plane. Investigators studied their personal records, interviewed colleagues, and searched their residences. During a search of the captain's home, a flight simulator was found on his computer, on which he had manually programmed points strongly resembling MH370's presumed trajectory. However, it is hard to imagine that a suicide would choose to remain airborne for several extra hours. Soon, it was revealed that just minutes before departure, the captain had spoken to someone on a mobile phone. The conversation was with a person who had purchased a SIM card using fake documents. The call lasted 2 minutes. The level of training and mental state of the MH370 pilots did not raise any suspicions. Their workload in the previous month fully complied with the airline's requirements. Other possible causes were also explored. The aircraft was carrying 221 kilograms of Motorola lithium-ion batteries. Under certain conditions, these could cause a fire or even an explosion, but Malaysia Airlines had already delivered hundreds of similar shipments without incidents. The aircraft was also transporting 4.5 tons of fresh tropical mangoes and more than 2 tons of textbooks. The actions of air traffic controllers were also examined. It was found that the senior controller in Kuala Lumpur was asleep for 4 hours, even after the Boeing 777 disappeared from radar screens. Vietnamese controllers began investigating why the aircraft had not entered their airspace only 20 minutes after losing the aircraft. Regulations require this to be done within 2 minutes. Malaysia Airlines' slow response was also noted. It declared an emergency only 5 hours and 13 minutes after the last contact with Flight 370. As a result of the search and rescue operation, an international investigative group was formed which prepared a final report spanning 1,500 pages over 4 years. However, it failed to determine what happened to the aircraft. The available evidence unmistakably indicates unlawful interference. The aircraft's communication system stopped working and it was manually turned around. This was unlikely to have occurred due to technical malfunctions. The turn was performed manually by the pilot or another person. Following the incident, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, developed measures to prevent similar occurrences in the future. The first innovation was equipping aircraft with tracking devices that, in distress situations, autonomously transmit location information once per minute. Changes were also made to flight recorders, extending their recording time to 25 hours. The disappearance of flight MH370 remains the greatest mystery in aviation history. Where is the Boeing 777 or its wreckage now? What exactly happened on board? All these questions remain unanswered.